The soap, General Hospital, Days of Our Lives. Boy, Colleen Bowen's favorite show when I was a young kid. He's like, "Oh, Kevin, you don't want to watch this. This is stupid, adult television." Well, frankly, I felt like I've lived it here, the professional life with the Colts, and that starting quarterback position. It continues. Another episode, another saga, another season. Anthony Richardson back as the starting quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, and we are back. Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen, Eddie Garrison across the way. Eddie, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Kevin. It's been a very, very quiet day in Colts land, hasn't it?
Yeah, just your typical Wednesday. It was kind of funny. I was alerted something could be happening just before Shane Steichen's press conference, and I just sat there just dumbfounded of like, I should be working, like I should be attempting to do something right now, but I was just like, you know what? I'll sip the coffee a little bit more and wait for Shane Steichen's statement. And I want to begin there, Eddie. I want to begin with Shane Steichen's opening statement. If I can kind of summarize my thoughts briefly, it's this. I think the Colts have handled this horribly. I think Shane Steichen's words, or lack thereof, have been a disappointment. I'm not asking for trade secrets to World War whatever, but I think you owe it to your fan base a touch of transparency, and especially with the Andrew Luck saga, which I get Shane Steichen wasn't here for. So, that has been, I think, more the prevalent topic over the last few days, Eddie. At the same time, I thought we were kind of losing the plot of like, wait a minute here. Let's not forget that the Colts benched Anthony Richardson before Halloween, and they've now, lost 3 straight games, and Joe Flacco, looks terrible. So both of those prevailing thoughts were kind of there for me over the past, 48 hours or so. But, I said it on our morning show today before Shane Steichen made this announcement. I almost felt like he needed to watch Kevin O'Connell's post-game interaction with Anthony Richardson a few weeks ago and just say that. Obviously, NFL coaches, by and large, are not super revealing, but I think you kind of owed it to everyone to have all right, this is what the process means. This is because it's gone from reps to win now to process. It's all just very confusing, and I thought Shane's opening statement today was strong. I thought it was candid. I thought it was lengthy. I thought it was the most energetic, un-Shane Steichen-like reveal that he probably should have said on day one, frankly, of the Anthony Richardson benching. So with that, here was Shane Steichen's opening statement from his weekly Wednesday morning press conference.
I want to address, Anthony's situation. I've said the process for a long time. And what I mean by that, it's the attention to detail in everything he does, from the classrooms to the walkthroughs to practice, to the weight room, all those little things, right? It just got to be at a higher standard. And that's what was talked about, and that's where we went with it. And so that was discussed with him 2 weeks ago, and those were the conversations that took place. And over the last 2 weeks, he's made strides in those areas, big-time strides, becoming a pro's pro. And is he a finished product? No, he's not. And it's my job to help him get there along with the rest of the coaching staff. But he's a hell of a talent. Like I said, we've never lost faith or belief in him and his abilities. And he's shown strides. He really has. And with that being said, he will be our starter again. He's going to start this week. He's going to start the rest of the season. All right. And we're going to go from there. And I informed Joe of the decision yesterday. He's the ultimate pro. He respects the decision, understands it. I talked to the team this morning about it as well. I informed them of the decision. And look, everyone has a different journey, right? Everyone has a different way, development and how you go about the process, and everyone wants instant gratification right now. And sometimes it doesn't work like that. And you fight through these times. And I love Anthony. He's a great person, got great faith in him and his abilities to be our franchise quarterback.
Credit to Shane Steichen. Eddie, I thought I was needed. I thought it was important just to kind of lay all of that out there. I think for the most part, it reveals some things, and I don't think it paints Anthony Richardson in an ugly picture by any means. I don't think it undresses the kid. I don't think it kills his confidence. I don't think it rips him. I think it holds him accountable, like clearly they were being with him for the last couple of weeks. The constant grind, the laser focus in meetings, attention to detail and everything he does, classroom to practice to weight room, it's got to be at a higher standard. All of that I'm nodding my head at. All of that makes sense to me. So let's start there. What'd you make of Shane Steichen today? What'd you make of the news and the announcement?
I thought Shane Steichen was very direct there in that opening statement, and then after that, he went back to being Shane Steichen. He's like, oh yeah, this, that, and the other. Oh, he's got to be professional, whatever, and then just went back to the coach speak. In terms of the move, told you on Monday on this podcast, it was all very odd. It didn't really sit right with me. Just how the offense was sputtering, and you throw 2 picks right out of the gate, and you still don't go to Richardson, and it's not like, you benched Richardson against Houston. He played well in terms of Joe Flacco to warrant going to Joe Flacco. So it just felt like a punishment and felt like him, like a kid being grounded, essentially. Oh, you're grounded for 2 weeks, no phone, no iPad. That's how I took it. And now they were in a spot where they could justify going back to Richardson after Flacco because he was not good. I mean, 2 of your 3 worst offensive games have come with Joe Flacco quarterbacking the team. And, I mean, like you said, was it 1 touchdown and 14 drives with Joe Flacco underneath center? So not surprised that they went back to it, but it's the one word that I keep coming back to describe it, dysfunction. That's the only word I can think of.
Yeah, that is certainly an accurate statement. They finally got to the right answer, in my opinion. It was filled with dysfunction. It was filled with mixed messaging. It was filled with minimal messaging. But they are now at the right place, again, of clarity, an attempt to get that and ideally develop your 21-year-old quarterback. That's where they should have been at the whole time, and that's where they are back at. Joe Flacco for 2 months, to me, does zero good to your franchise here moving forward. So, again, don't be bad, don't be boring, don't be old at quarterback. Don't be all 3 of those things at once.
Right.
If you're that, it's not going to go well, and now you're going to get some answers, and that's where we're at. Questions that I had throughout the press conference, and I'll explain any sort of clarity we got. Why wasn't the QB standard that is necessary in the NFL? I tried to make the analogy a few weeks ago, right before the presidential election. Playing quarterback in the NFL is like being the president, the czar of a country, of a nation. It's not the student body president at Decatur Central or Cathedral High School.
Yep.
It's bigger than that. And I thought Anthony Richardson had a pretty enlightening statement today in saying when he got drafted, he went to David Thornton, who, for those unfamiliar, former Colts linebacker, kind of in charge of, I call him player liaison, but a much bigger role than just that. They go to him for pretty much everything and anything. Certainly a lot of off-the-field stuff. They go to David Thornton for that. And so, Anthony said he went to David Thornton, and David told him to watch and follow 3 players. Those 3 players happen to be Shaq Leonard, Zaire Franklin, DeForest Buckner. And those 3 players, of course, are all on the defensive side of the ball. So I thought that was kind of interesting in that, like, offensively, who is that guy? You think about it, when he entered the NFL, Jonathan Taylor was in a contract dispute.
Yeah.
Wide receiver-wise, yes, with Michael Pittman, but still, it's contract year for Pittman. He's still in the rookie deal. Tight end-wise, of course, there's really no one in that room either. Offensive line, I think you have some, but...
You got 2, right?
Yeah, obviously you have Kelly and you have Nelson, but still, I just feel like offensively, could you have surrounded him a little better, particularly at a pass catcher spot? Because, those are the guys that you interact with, I think, a good amount there. But again, why wasn't this seen earlier with Richardson? Because when you look at the Richardson career so far, it's 10 starts, Eddie. He has the 4 last year, then obviously misses the entire season. Comes back this offseason. Shane Steichen said this offseason was fine. He starts the first 4 games. Then he sits for 2, and then he comes back in the lineup for 2. As soon as you start to see, as soon as I watch Max Bowen grab for the lighter when it's somebody's birthday to light the candles, my octave and voice goes through the roof.
Is that a true story?
It seemingly is for every single birthday. I'm like, can we get this kid further away from the cake than anyone, especially when we're lighting it? As soon as you feel an ounce of slippage, that's your prized possession. That's the man that impacts everything within your organization. Steichen, Ballard, Irsay, 52 guys in that locker room, everybody. As soon as you feel it, because again, he didn't grow up in Arch Manning culture. He didn't grow up in Kyler Murray culture. He didn't grow up in C.J. Stroud culture. Like, as soon as you feel that, the support and the development aspect of selecting the player, because by all accounts, he's good. He's a good dude.
Right. Yeah.
He's having fun. The
Yeah.
day after he got benched, he's up in the trees in Carmel. Halloween candy's getting passed out. He's scaring kids like, typical Halloween. He's passing candy out. We see him changing tires on the side of the road. Like, there's not this intent with Anthony Richardson, but there's probably 21 and 22-year-old moments of maturity.
Starstruck is the word that I would probably use to describe it. It's like a guy, it's like, holy crap, I'm in the NFL, and a guy that doesn't really understand the magnitude of which of him being in the NFL means.
Correct. And so, again, why wasn't this seen earlier? I think Colts organizationally, obviously you would love for the individual to do his part in that, but organizationally, it's paramount that he knows where the bar is at, where that line is, all of those things. So I thought that was just kind of an interesting discussion that was had on Wednesday. I did think Shane Steichen wasn't very truthful in the comment about, did Joe Flacco's bad play have anything to do with this? You can't tell me if this was a 1-1 football team that Flacco wouldn't be starting on Sunday. I mean, hell, he was named the starter on Monday. I mean, what magically changed in the 12 hours after the Monday press conference? He could have gone back to the we're evaluating everything line. We're in a 3-game losing streak like he did a few weeks prior. So Flacco's bad play, as it should, had some impact on it. You don't need to go over the same numbers we went over on Monday, but Flacco's been horrific. 6 turnovers in 21 drives. The other 15 drives have had 2 touchdowns, 7 of 23 on third down. Steichen hasn't been happy with him from a third down standpoint. I mean, the errors for a 39-year-old quarterback were bad, but I will stand by that. I feel like if Flacco would have played better, we would not have gotten this move as quickly as it happened. Very similar to if Jeff Saturday had won one more football game. Jeff Saturday probably would have been the head coach of the Colts. I did have several people reach out to me and ask, how much did the old ticket renewals coming up on November 15th have anything to do with it? I do believe that this was a Shane Steichen decision.
From the start?
I do. I think Jim Irsay certainly made his voice known to Shane Steichen, and Shane Steichen wasn't born yesterday. He certainly knows who pays his checks, but I think that this was ultimately a Shane Steichen call on what he was going to do with the quarterback.
Was he influenced?
I think he was. How can you not be a little bit? I'm not saying I thought Jim Irsay, I think the mandate word is very, very applicable to what happened in 2022.
Yeah.
With Jim Irsay and demanding Sam Ehlinger, demanding Jeff Saturday, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think that same word or aggressive energy, however you want to describe it, was at play here with this. So I know it's a question that I get from a lot of people. And I think Eddie, as we kind of pivot forward now, is okay, what to expect from Richardson. Certainly the Colts coaching staff needs to earn their stripes in coaching. He needs to earn his own stripes in further development. Now we get back to those questions, Eddie. Accuracy, consistency, run game. Jonathan Taylor, what does that look like? Does that reach that kind of explosive nature that people thought? Taylor had 21 carries on Sunday. 7 of them went for 0 negative yards. As much as he had a big day, it could have been even bigger. Availability. I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but I mean, it's another road start for Anthony Richardson coming up on Sunday. It's a road start in a place where seemingly it's like a house of horrors for injuries. How does he do out on the MetLife turf that we hear so much about? I go back to that Houston game the last time that we saw him. I mean, what great, valuable experience he got. He obviously made numerous mistakes in that game. I brought up going out of bounds on the final drive on that scramble on the first play. I go back to the end of the first half of that game when he throws the pick on 3rd and 3 after throwing the near pick on 2nd down. How do you learn when you get in your next 2-minute drill? How do you respond? When you get into your next road environment, how do you handle it? When you get into that late first half sequence, how do you handle that? These are all the experiences you can't script. And that's why playing him makes the most sense. He missed playing Brian Flores on prime time and that defense. He missed facing the guy that he's comped to the most in Josh Allen. Now he's going to get a Hall of Fame quarterback on the opposing sideline this weekend. A defense that had great moments early in the season and then just let Kyler Murray complete 17 straight passes last week. Next week, he's going to see Man Campbell in his own building. So it's just, this is the right decision. How they got there is screams of dysfunction and all of those things that you laid out earlier, Eddie. But this is the right move. If the arrow continues to point down, do you feel like at the end of the 2024 campaign, you're closer to clarity? Okay, we're done. All right, well, then you pivot in the offseason.
Yeah.
Do you feel like he takes strides in some areas, but then all of a sudden you have clarity, lack of clarity, I should say, in others? And by that I mean this. Does he handle game situations better than he did in Houston?
Right.
But is the inaccuracy still there at the end of the year? Okay, if that's the case, now you feel like, hey, let's go send him to a different quarterback guru. Let's go send him to the, whatever, to the Tom House type expert.
Right.
Those sorts of things.
Yeah.
That is looking at it from a glass kind of like half empty-ish view, because obviously I'm laying out things of Richardson not taking real growth. And if he makes strides, then obviously you feel more encouraged heading into the 2025 offseason, and maybe this reset was important to him, and that wake-up call was there. So I feel like that kind of summarizes everything for me, Eddie, just in this decision. It's insane. It's wild. I can't believe that we're here. I thought they would go back to him in 2024, but I thought once Steichen committed to him on Monday, we were done with that conversation for a week.
Right.
And again, asking Shane
the process.
What changed from the opening comments to that press conference on Monday afternoon to telling Joe Flacco and Richardson on Tuesday he was going in a different direction is odd. So unless you got anything else, Eddie, let's hop into Twitter questions. Okay, go ahead. And I guess lastly, before you chime in there, I do think a credit to Shane Steichen for that opening statement. Again, I think Shane is not necessarily one that enjoys meeting the media and or sharing much with the media. I get that a lot of NFL coaches side more with that side of it, but I think an ounce of transparency is important in certain instances, and I thought his opening statement today was strong. It was candid. It was un-Shane Steichen-like. I thought it was necessary, and I don't think people walk away from that all of a sudden thinking to themselves, oh my gosh, I can't believe he just called out Anthony Richardson like that. How dare that? No, the Colts aren't going to be able to attract free agents now. No quarterbacks are going to want to play for it. No, this is the National Football League. These are professionals. These are big boys. You can make those comments and it not be the end of the world. So I did appreciate that from Shane Steichen on Wednesday.
When it comes to Anthony, I've only been able to hear just a little bit just because I was producing the Aquarium Company from 12 to 3, and then we just get right into it right after that, pretty much hop of that studio and come right in here. So I haven't had time to really listen to everything that he has said, but the way in which he was speaking was different to me. I know you talked about that with Shane. I got that a little bit with Anthony from what I've seen, from what I've read so far. This is a different version to where it's not the happy-go-lucky, it's not the starstruck, oh, I'm living out a dream thing. It's time to go to work. I got to stay locked in. And the one thing that stood out to me is he said that I've got to keep this. And now I think the reset was huge for him in that aspect to kind of relight the fire of his hunger of wanting to get better in the NFL versus being complacent of just being in the NFL.
Yeah, one of the words he used quite often today was sacrifice, and that you have to make some sacrifices to play that position and survive at that position.
Of like doing stuff that your teammates tell you should be doing that you weren't doing before and that kind of deal.
And look, there are rewards. There are tangible rewards on Sundays and Mondays and Thursdays if you get there, and there are also major financial rewards if you get there as well. So, he mentioned I'm low-key glad that it happened and all of those things, and consistency is something that he really, really felt like that he needed to work on. And I do caution a little bit of that of just like, okay, he could be really now sound Monday through Saturday and in a better spot Monday through Saturday. But Eddie, that doesn't necessarily mean he completes a ball from me to you on the numbers.
Right.
So I guess I go back to those things of like, now we're back to the on-field questions of accuracy, consistency, run game, availability. Like now we're back into those questions because, how much of the arrow pointing down was contributed to his whatever, Monday through Saturday lack of, the high standard that it takes to be there. We'll find out. But, by no means do I think just because they're going back to him, we're going to see this like resurrection of sorts. But you're going to start to continue to get answers. And I think that is the really important thing. The answers could be good. They could be bad. Some good, some bad. Great. But you're now going to get answers. And I think it's important to get back into that mode. I was pretty adamant. Earlier this week, I sent out a clip from our morning show of 2 months of Joe Flacco to me does no good.
Zero.
No good. And especially when he's playing like that. And so now, at least you're going to get some answers. And at 4-6, and we can get into this more when we talk about the Jets, I mean, the schedule offers you certainly plenty of opportunity. By no means am I saying that this is a playoff team, but still, I mean, someone's got to be the 7th team in the AFC. And how that plays out will be another thing to keep an eye on. But, yeah, I thought Richardson, I thought at times he's been a little overblown and like saying like, oh, he lacks so much humility in his press conference settings. I never got like that full-on vibe of like, I'm cocky, I'm the big bad dude, I don't need to work, et cetera, et cetera. I haven't gotten that. I mean, certainly I felt like there was more of that from him today. And now we'll see how it translates coming up on Sunday afternoon.
One final thing before we get into Twitter questions. There was not a practice today for the Colts, so typically we have some sort of clarity on, injury statuses and whatnot, but it was a walkthrough, so the injury report will be an estimated injury report if they were to practice today. So if we are still recording by the time that injury report comes out, we'll try to tag it at the end here. But if you don't have anything else to add, KB, let's get into the Twitter questions.
I'll throw one more there. Bernard Ryman, that left knee, he came back on the sidelines. He tried to do some pass pro sets with his helmet on. It didn't look great to me. Obviously, he didn't go back in the game after playing 13 snaps. So is it Matt Gonzalez for another week? And, Eddie, that could be a rookie left tackle for Anthony Richardson on Sunday in a road environment. Again, just another thing of life in the NFL that you can't replicate being the backup quarterback here. So I think with that, we'll obviously keep an eye on that. We'll see about Michael Pittman Jr. and his availability. Shout out to A.D. Mitchell. I know we talked about it a little bit on Monday's pod, but again, just on time and reliable.
Mm-hmm.
That had been an issue for the first 9 games. Not all his fault, but it had been an issue. Throwing to him did not lead to success for whatever reason. When they threw to him on Sunday, it was successful. His playing time really increased. So I do want to make sure we give a shout out to him.
Mark is up first. You've got a handful, obviously, with it being a very big news day. In your honest opinion, given how much experience and feel you have with this organization, do you feel or do you think Jim Irsay was involved with the decision-making on this whole Anthony Richardson situation? Usually when the math is not mathing in Indy, we usually have an idea of where to point. I'm having trouble believing this isn't the case because otherwise there's a lot of things that don't make sense, and I have no choice but to question Shane Steichen.
Yeah, and that's fine. And there's been points to me in the last 2 weeks, Eddie, and this is going to sound harsh to Shane Steichen, where I'm like, Shane Steichen is not this dumb, is he?
Exactly.
I felt that about some of their actions, some of their words. Again, their lack thereof in some of the words. I think Shane Steichen lives in a football bunker, which is, again, a lot of that can be great for a head football coach. But I do think there's times where, when you are the voice of the franchise, that you got to just see a little bit outside of that bunker window on occasion here.
I can see him being the guy who's like, hey, honey, I got to figure out what we're doing on 3rd and 2 for this week against the Jets. Can you go tuck in the daughter and tell the girls goodnight?
What? Yeah.
I don't know if he has a daughter or girls, but
yes, he has a son and a daughter. Yeah, I could certainly get some of those vibes. But someone asked me, like, is this a low point? And I'll say this. I thought Sunday's start to the game, Eddie, was one of the lowest points I've heard Lucas Oil Stadium in quite some time.
Oh, there were boos, for sure.
First quarter boo birds, multiple drives.
Yeah.
And so I guess I bring that up to say this in regards to Mark's question, Jim Irsay and all of this. Again, I don't think Jim Irsay mandated this decision. I guess let me answer that question.
That's why I asked you earlier if he had an influence.
Right. Again, indirectly, he's going to have an influence. If our boss walks in here right now, Eddie, and says, you know what? I'd really like if you guys started to put some bumper music into Twitter questions. We probably would look at each other and then just kind of, but I'm not saying you have to, but
you have to.
Just a suggestion. And he walked out of here. We'd probably throw some bumper music onto Twitter questions, will we not?
Yeah.
So I just think that, that could be something because remember back to 2022, Jim Irsay made it abundantly clear that he mandated Sam Ehlinger start for 2 games.
Oh, yeah.
And he made it abundantly clear that he hired Jeff Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
So when he wants to be heard from, we hear from him. The Twitter looks pretty quiet, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
A post-game media scrum or two, which he's been known to have. I haven't seen any of those. So, I all 3 of these parties were very much on the same page 18 months ago.
Do you guys still see him at the games?
I have not seen him as much as I used to. But again, I'm not traveling to the road games with the show, obviously, early on Monday morning. Certainly, we all saw him at, Miami game, right?
Yeah, because of Dallas Clark.
But the other question I'm getting with Irsay right now is this, Eddie. Will they make big changes? And obviously that being Chris Ballard and or Shane Steichen. And I'll say this. The Colts are currently in a 5-game offensive rut that we're not used to. 5 games of 20 points or less in a row.
Yeah.
It's the 4th time in franchise history they have been in one of those since 1998. Well, if you look at Irsay and his father's passing, that pretty much coincides with Jim Irsay becoming the full owner. So when you look at those 3 other times, this being the 4th time, Eddie, the 3 other times they've been in this sort of offensive rut, 2011. What happened in 2011? Polian, Caldwell, gone. 2017. What happened in 2017? Chuck Pagano, gone. Chris Ballard, year 1, retained. What happened in 2022? The other time it happened. Frank Reich, fired. Ballard, retained. Year 6 of Ballard. So as we look at past precedent, and again, trying to predict Jim Irsay's me, like trying to dodge a pothole here over the next couple of months. If you're trying to predict him, there is past precedent of when they have been in these sorts of offensive ruts, offensive issues, that they have made big changes.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying it's not. Does Chris Ballard really survive a 3rd different instance of this when it's happened 4 times in the last 25 years? Those are all thoughts running through my head right now.
What's this new platform, social media that everyone's joining?
Is that Blue Sky?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking you.
I have not joined it yet. Usually I
Did you ever join Threads?
I panicked and joined Threads, and I also made a TikTok one night when it looked like Twitter was going to go down. I was calling my sister-in-law, asking her about it. Shout out to Anna Lubber. She's a frequent listener of this podcast there. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I need to text her again and get the Blue Sky.
The next Twitter question is from Trevor. Just saw the AR news that he is starting again. Holla frickin' Luya. I was at the game Sunday for the first time in 12 years, and after Old Man Flacco's performance, I was really hoping the organization would put Richardson back in. This season is slipping away fast. I'm not saying AR will change that, but it feels good knowing games will be at least more entertaining and will hopefully give the team a cleaner answer on whether he is the guy or not. I don't know that sitting him for 2 weeks really gave him time to focus on improving, but do you think this is Chris Ballard grasping for straws to save his job? In my opinion, get Ballard out of there at the end of the season. It's been far too long.
Again, I guess it kind of goes back to the last question that we just had there, Trevor, but I think a trickle-down effect that you have to ask yourself if you're Jim Irsay now is how tight at the hip are those two?
Ballard and Richardson?
Ballard and Steichen. That would be the question. Because in NFL circles, and honestly, we just saw this in our own backyard, Eddie. In NFL circles, the lame duck head coach with a new GM usually doesn't end well for the lame duck head coach. And I bring that up here locally, for those unfamiliar, the Indiana Fever, with Christy Sides garnering, she garnered some Coach of the Year votes, did she not?
I don't know.
they went from 7 wins to however many they won. I think they finished exactly at 500, right? 20-20.
Yeah.
They jumped to 20 wins and make the postseason for the first time in 7 years, 8 years, et cetera, et cetera. Boom. They all of a sudden have a aging front office. They transition to a new front office, and Christie Sides is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's kind of how it goes in professional sports. And the NFL, I would say, usually sides on more urgency and less patience than other professional sports leagues. You want to go down swinging with your people. So I just think all of those things are very, very true there. I've made it abundantly clear, I think, where my Ballard thoughts are. I didn't think he should have. I don't think you're on the right to be here past 2022 when all of that happened, but clearly Jim Irsay's thought otherwise with this. And so that's why I try to lay out the past precedent of, okay, when they've had these issues, how does it unfold? Now, are we back to this hey, we're back to patience with Anthony Richardson, and it's going to be a 3-year process? I kind of always looked at it in that light. But again, if 4-6 turns into 7-10, boy, I mean, that's kind of an ugly stain after where last season was. So certainly I think that becomes, outside of Richardson, that becomes the big question here for the final 2 months of the season.
Tyler would like to know, so is it fair to say this was a disciplinary or accountability benching and not a, quote, win-now move with the switch from AR to Flacco?
There's... Boy, I mean, I've tried to ask this every way possible, Eddie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've asked was he late to meetings now on several occasions? I've asked I
haven't heard that.
Away his captaincy. I've asked, was he benched? Again, every way, shape, or form, it's been asked. And that's probably where we haven't gotten the clarity. But again, let's go back to Shane Steichen's opening statement. Clearly, the off-the-field standard was not being met. I think we all can agree on that. If you're listening to Shane Steichen's words, I don't think the tap, and again, all these things, Jim Irsay, a little hint here, a little bit of a tap out here, all that stuff, I think just kind of naturally adds up a bit. I think Joe Flacco's play adds up a little bit. I mean, how can you look at Flacco and say, wait, what?
How can you look at DeForest Buckner, Kenny Moore, Zaire Franklin, all those guys, and be like, hey, this guy gives us the best chance to win?
Well, or frankly, Anthony Richardson of hey, watch his standard. Well, if I'm Anthony Richardson, I want to be like, what am I watching here? 6 interceptions and 2 in 2 games, or 6 turnovers, I should say, in 2 games. So, again, I don't know. Shane says Flacco's our starter going forward. How do you kind of view it like that? If it was a 2-week benching, should he have even dressed? Why was he the backup then? Do you take away his captaincy? If you really have this big of an issue with him off the field, shouldn't you take that away? Isn't there a standard as a captain to reach?
I think
all these things are just thoughts going in my head. Are you going to half-ass it, or are you going to go full in on it?
I think if it was a much more egregious situation, then maybe if it was just a slap on the wrist to a kid, like to Max Bone or Rosie, if they did something that's hey, this is a slap on the wrist. Yeah,
I thought it was an aggressive slap on the wrist to let kind of 2 weeks go by before any clarity, because you just let rumors run rampant about the whys and the what are they not telling us and what's so secretive about it. I think that's a disservice, frankly, to the player as well. I thought Zaire Franklin had a great quote today in the locker room about as captains, we need to make sure that we help out Anthony too now going forward. And this kind of goes back to Anthony, talking to David Thornton and Zaire and DeForest, and obviously Shaq Leonard's no longer here, but kind of earn the C on your chest is what Zaire was saying of this is our prized possession and we need to help him along. And I just look offensively, and I don't know if there's a lot of those guys, to be honest with you. There's some very good football players, and I think there's some very good pros. Not everyone's built like Zaire Franklin. I mean, he was the 1 3-year captain in Syracuse history in the last 100 years or something. I mean, again, that's just different. So, I think this is a kid that needs all your attention, all your focus, and I'm saying this is a parental analogy here.
Mm-hmm.
And at times you might be frustrated by it. At times you might want to look at your partner and say it's your turn. But at the end of the day, this is life. This is reality for this franchise. And if you don't get him right, then you're going to have a setback of some sort.
Yeah. Was it like potty training, KB?
Gosh, Max Bowen had me so fooled the other night. Said he needed to go poop, and then we get him on the toilet, and he just laughs and touches his you-know-what for 30 seconds. I'm like, gosh, man. I'm like, I want to cuss at you, but gosh, I love you.
How old is he, and he's already doing that?
I know.
Are we concerned?
Yeah, I know. I'm like, dude, you're 20. What is he, 26 months old? I'm like, yeah, how's he doing that? Someone said that instead of Max picking Colts Jets this week, I should have him pick a starting quarterback.
Oh.
Should I print out pictures of Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco and have him pick one?
That's not a bad idea. That sounds like a Joel Erickson idea right there.
Who was it? It was somebody today in the media room. I'm trying to think who it was. I need to give credit to. I apologize if anyone's somehow listening and I totally missed the boat there. But what do we got?
We've got 3 questions left. Walter, Jason, and Kevlar. We will start with Walter. With how bad the offense has been and the defense making plays, do you think they are extending the Gus Bradley era? I honestly hope we move on after this season, but if the offense keeps playing this way, we may be stuck with him for another season.
Boy, I can't even think about Gus Bradley's future right now, Eddie. It's just like, it's the furthest thing from my mind. I mean, I understand that, this will be an offseason question. Obviously, so much of it depends on above him and how that is viewed. Certainly, the defense has taken positive steps forward in recent weeks.
Right.
I don't think it overshadows 2.5 years of Gus Bradley football on that side of the ball for me. I still would like to see a unit that's getting off the field more consistently. It's kind of wild, Eddie. We did a segment today, our morning show.
The positivity?
The positivity on the Colts.
I heard that this morning.
6 minutes of only positive Colts comments, okay? And, every NFL team pretty much does this. Each week they send out a stat pack. And, in the stat pack, there's pretty much, I'd say probably 35 to 40 stats that are, think generic offense, defense, special team stats.
Passing yards, run games, total yards, first
sacks,
downs,
interceptions, et cetera, et cetera. All of that generic stuff to a lot of people. And so when we were planning for this positive Colts segment, I'm like, I'll just go there. There's got to be a couple of things that they do that they're a top 10 unit in. The only, and I may need to double check this. I believe they're ninth in run. They're ninth in rushing something. They're fifth in kick return average.
Nice.
That was the only one I could find in the top 8.
Nice.
So the upper quartile, just one statistic on that end. I'm like, oh my gosh, where are we at here? Colts walkthrough is out.
I see that. I've got it.
DNP for DeForest Buckner foot. Never good to see 300-pounders dealing with foot issues, right?
That's right. Bernard Ryman with a knee injury. He did not participate. EJ Speed, he's been off and on the injury report last couple weeks with a knee issue, was limited in the estimated injury report. Full participants today for Julian Blackmon and Michael Pittman Jr.
So Pittman trending as playing?
Blackmon with a shoulder injury, Pittman with that back. I thought there was a chance that they would just not let him play until after their bye week, but if that was the case, they would have put him on injured reserve last week because it would have been 4 weeks and then the bye. 4 games and then the bye week.
Yeah, again, I didn't get a great feel on Ryman earlier in the week. We'll see how that plays out. Buckner, he's a guy that obviously you just kind of bet on playing, but certainly he will be one to watch coming up on Sunday.
2 questions left. We'll try to get these through before the conclusion of the podcast. Jason, I'm an Indiana native living in Houston. NFL Sunday Ticket is a ripoff. So I buy a VPN subscription and NFL Game Pass in order to watch the Colts. I think it works out to about $10 per game. Right now, it feels like I'm paying $10 per week to sign up for a heated argument with my wife because I'm yelling and getting emotionally invested. Why would I do that voluntarily next year? Hashtag, I can't say the hashtag, I'm sorry.
Why?
Well, remember, Kevin, they weren't allowing these signs in the Solo Stadium, so I can't say the hashtag.
I thought there was a cuss word in it.
Oh, no.
So the hashtag had something to do with free AR5?
Oh, yeah. Precisely.
Can I interject as a fan for just a second here?
I think that's incredibly weak.
Notre Dame, yeah, I would agree on that. Notre Dame was losing to Buffalo at halftime on Monday in men's basketball.
Did you panic?
The 15 minutes of halftime and my emotional state during those 15, they went on a 20-2 run to open up the second half. The 15 minutes of halftime and how freaking pissed I was? I'm just served these reminders. Obviously, I had one with Northern Illinois earlier in the year. Fortunately, Notre Dame football's provided a lot of moments of not in that same realm here as of late. It's just like, oh my gosh, I'm psychotic.
Yeah.
I should probably watch myself. What am I doing here? But then Notre Dame goes on a 20-2 run. I'm like, this is great. I might read Rosie's 7 books before bed tonight. This is the greatest thing in the world. God, fandom.
Gotta love it, right?
Okay, what do you sell for next year? Now, obviously, the turn back to Richardson, I think, probably changes a little bit of the tone. But still, if Richardson continues the arrow to point down, Eddie, I mean, we're going to have a similar conversation here come January 15th that we've had here for the past couple of weeks. So, boy, next year's going to be wild. And again, ticket renewals, it sounds like they were this week, or they are this week. I can't recall an offseason like this, in that what could be. And again, 7 games could change a lot of things, good or bad. But just wild. I would say, I don't know if this sells hope, Jason, to necessarily upping that money again for next year. But I want to remind people that, and I tried to do this Monday, and I know Josh Allen didn't have a great game against the Colts, but the QB reminder of that's the type of guy you need to strive for. It's difficult to find him. Very difficult. But let's just look at the AFC playoff picture right now. And I know I've done this with the division champs, but if you just go through the list, Eddie, the quarterbacks that would be starting in the AFC here for the postseason.
Okay.
Pittsburgh's the outlier. Pittsburgh's just they're a machine. Mike Tomlin is a robot. TJ Watt is a robot. They are a machine. Okay, so take Pittsburgh out of it.
All right.
10th overall pick, Patrick Mahomes. 7th overall pick, Josh Allen. 32nd overall pick, Lamar Jackson. 2nd overall pick, CJ Stroud.
Yep.
6th overall pick, Justin Herbert. 12th overall pick, Bo Nix.
Okay.
First-round quarterbacks drafted by those teams. Only one top 5 pick. Again, I think all of this adds a little hope of yes, these are the guys you need to try and find. Now, obviously, not all of them are on the same level. I would be an absolute idiot to compare Bo Nix to any of these others. But still, these are the guys that you try and strive for. And it's not perfect. And it doesn't necessarily mean that sustained success is going to be there. Ask Trevor Lawrence.
Right.
Ask Tua.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things. Ask Joe Burrow. But those are the types of quarterbacks that get to the day. Yeah, you have your one little outlier every year. You have your Tannehill. You have your Russell Wilson. Yes, those are there. But 6 of 7, I want to bet on those percentages.
Yeah. And
so, again, if you want hope, let's say Richardson becomes a train wreck the rest of the season and it goes awful. And the Colts, let's say they go 7-10. Where does 7 wins get you, Eddie? 10th overall pick? Something like that? 12th?
Well, considering where everything's at right now, I have no idea.
Okay, let's just say it's in that general range.
Middle?
Okay, let's say it's 12.
Oh, there's a chance a 9-win team makes the playoffs.
Right, so 9-win team is going to be, around, okay, let's just say it's around 12. I have no idea. We'd have to look up last year. I mean, last year, the Colts had the 15th overall pick with 9 wins, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say this year they have the 11th
12.
overall pick.
Yeah, 12.
With 7 wins. Mahomes is 10. Bo Nix was 12. Josh Allen was 7. I mean, that's in your general vicinity. And I'm not saying Shadur Sanders and Cam Ward and, any of these other quarterbacks necessarily are that.
Right.
But that, I think, is where you have hope of yes, what's the plan? You could be back to square one, all of those things. But look at the AFC. All of those franchises in different ways were in your shoes at one point. Now the question is making the right selection, support, and development. And right now, the Colts obviously have questions with their own guy on all 3 of those levels.
Final question is from Kevlar. What's up, KB? I'd like to say that you were right and I was wrong about the Colts quarterback situation. How about that, Kevin? Someone admitting that they were wrong and you were right.
Kevlar sounds like my burner. I just threw this in there as the last question to try and give me some props here.
Is it? You have a burner?
I can't say I do.
Now, here's a crazy thought that you might like. How do you feel about the Colts firing Shane Steichen and signing Mike Vrabel? This team is a team that Vrabel would do wonders with, and not to mention Ryan Tannehill flourished underneath Mike Vrabel, and he could probably be the perfect coach to get the best out of AR. Lastly, is your type of coach someone who focuses on the entire operation as opposed to one side of the ball? Thanks for all that you do.
Gosh, you almost forget that Vrabel's out there.
He's with Cleveland, right?
Right. I kind of forget that he is. I'll be curious to see what his status looks like here coming up in the offseason. Look, I understood where the Colts were coming from with Shane Steichen. You're in a dire state at quarterback, dire state offensively. That sort of mind and the Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert. And the thing about, Hurts and Herbert and Rivers, if you hear Shane Steichen talk about them, obviously those three quarterbacks, all different shapes and sizes. But Shane's pretty adamant that all of them prepared like no other. And so I do feel like that kind of falls back into the line with the Anthony Richardson discussion to tie it into the start of the pod. But in terms of this question, Vrabel is a guy that, yes, if for some reason the Colts were looking for a new head coach, and let me be clear, I don't think Shane Steichen should be fired. I sit here on November 13th and say that. I think he's a first-time head coach. I think this is a big learning point. I don't think he handled the last couple of weeks very well, but now we're going to see, how much the off-the-field stuff worked for Anthony Richardson and how the offense transforms, I guess, over the final 7 games and moving on. But, I would say what's frustrating right now is, you hired Shane Steichen for the football nerdy stuff. You didn't hire him because he's going to go win the press conference. The issue right now, Eddie, is the football nerdy stuff isn't going well. So that exasperates, I think, a little bit of the stain on him here currently. CEO or offense? It's the great debate. I don't know if I'd totally side with Kevlar here in saying that Mike Vrabel got, yes, Tannehill did play good football, but I don't want to act like all of a sudden Tennessee found some savior at that position. And again, they come in different shapes and sizes. I mean, John Harbaugh got a lot out of Lamar Jackson. Is John Harbaugh an offensive mind?
Yeah.
No. He's not, so Andy
I'm
Reid,
saying no, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand what you were saying. Andy Reid obviously got a lot out of Patrick Mahomes. He is an offensive mind. Like there's not just the cookie cutter. Look at the Lions with Dan Campbell. Look at Houston with DeMeco Ryans and C.J. Stroud. Again, all very different. I think the NFL game is so crazy.
Belichick and Brady.
Right. The NFL game is so crazy. I think the CEO is probably the smartest route.
Mm-hmm.
But quarterback means so much.
Yeah.
And as soon as Bobby Slowick leaves Houston, as soon as Ben Johnson leaves Detroit, how does the C.J. Stroud, Jared Goff's experiences go? Obviously the Bears are feeling it right now with their change at offensive coordinator. Again, Baltimore has proven that Lamar Jackson is just a freaking cheat code, and it's incredible what he's been able to do. And Kansas City's had some turnover as well, and they've been able to keep it going as well. Now, is that Andy Reid? All of these things just make for great case studies. So, again, I'm not married to CEO or offensive mind. I thought if they were debating one side of the ball or the other back in the coaching cycle, that offense made sense because of the quarterback pick you were about to make.
Yeah.
But certainly Raheem Morris, who in my opinion was probably the runner-up, he's had a nice start in Atlanta. And we'll see how Michael Penix's development unfolds from there. So I think that's what makes the NFL really interesting is you do have a lot of teams pretty split. I mean, what would you say? It's probably what, a third of the coaches do the play calling?
Probably, yeah.
We'd have to go through the entire league, but so obviously, and there are some really good teams that do that. Super Bowl caliber coaches that do that. But at the same time, that CEO element to me is probably where I would go. I just think there's so much on the plate. And right now, inevitably, I just think Shane Steichen has to be so focused on the quarterback, he removes himself from some of the, Kenny Moore type comments. It's hard to be in all these different places right now. And right now, if you're the Colts, that's the issue, is you have, and I said this on Monday, and I'll repeat it here as we wrap up. If you're Jim Irsay, right now you look at Chris Ballard in the locker room, his biggest baby is an issue. If you look at Shane Steichen, his biggest baby, the offense and the quarterback, that's an issue. And I think that is what is very, very needed right now to be addressing. All right, let's go with the Jets. What do you got here? They're favored by how much? 3.5, 4?
And they're Aaron Rodgers is getting questioned if he's coming back next year already.
So the Jets have lost 6 of 7. Eddie, they have not received the interim spark at all. I can't believe they've missed the playoffs for 13 straight years.
They designated Chuck Clark to return today. Devontae Adams has practiced today with an illness and a wrist
Devontae Adams has
injury.
not been good since his arrival. Him and Rodgers are having issues. They missed 20 tackles last week. They can't score.
The Tyron Smith exited the game on
he will
Sunday.
not play. Tyron Smith, their left tackle.
Neck injury. Brandon Eccles, one of their corners. They've had a decimated cornerback room because of injuries. He left the game with a concussion. C.J. Mosley's banged up.
Spencer Schrader's kicking for him.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see if Spencer Schrader kicks again. Their overall defensive numbers are pretty good. They were really bad against Arizona last week.
They're number 2 against the pass.
Which, if you look at their numbers since Bob Sala's firing, it's a different story. I think they're allowing 100 yards more per game. I think they're allowing like 8 or 9 points more per game since that. So we probably should keep in mind that. Oh my gosh, man. I haven't even thought about picking this game.
Give up the 8th most rushing yards.
What the hell is the over-under? Is it north of 40?
It's a great question.
So 3.5. When I saw the line at the start of the week, I thought it was Jets by too many. 43.5 on the over-under. Really?
Wow. Wow.
Jets favored by 4. Oh,
I'm still saying 3.5. Jets total points 23.5. Colts 19.5. How about that?
I'll go 19-16 Colts. I'm 9-1 on Colts picks this year, by the way. Green Bay's the only game I've missed. This one, though, I mean, shit.
I think I'm 3-6, and that's just because the last couple of weeks I've been trying to go against the trend to try and catch up.
I have noticed that. I have noticed you've gone Colts here lately. I got no idea. I mean, Shane Steichen tried to make the comparison to the 3-5 boat from last year. I'm like, well, I mean, Bryce Young and Mac Jones are waiting for you after 3-5. I mean, maybe Aaron Rodgers is that, but Jonathan Taylor was about to play a little bit more. They had actually scored. I think they had scored 38 and 27 in their 2 recent games. They're about to bench Darius Leonard. Again, a lot of those things I think are a little different than compared to this year. But all I know is this. It is a massive game. This, to me, is the breaking point.
Mm-hmm.
I said it to you last week, Eddie. 5-3 down the stretch, you beat the Jets and the Broncos. Okay? You've already lost 1. That means 5-2. You have the second easiest schedule in the NFL the rest of the way.
I'm going Colts, by the way.
Got to beat the Broncos, got to beat the Jets, and probably should beat the Patriots. The Patriots are weirdly 3-7.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, I don't know, lurking on that end. You got a score?
Colts outscore the Jets.
Come on.
3-2.
That would sum up everything right now.
Right. I'll go 19. No, not 19. I'll do 17-16.
17-16. I did 19-16. Are we Matt Gay making field goals, missing extra points? What are we?
Well, we got 2 touchdowns over here and a field goal for me.
Got it. He's Eddie Garrison. I'm Kevin Bowen. Thanks for listening. Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen signing off.